Here's the question. How do you make the impossible possible? Simple. Remove the I am, the ego. Now, how do you step into that newfound possibility? With a series of small intentional steps. Never forget, the greatest among us started from humble beginnings. But to truly unlock your potential, realize you're here for something greater. If you're yearning for more than just a good life, let's take that small step together to reach greatness. Welcome to the Greatness from Small Beginnings podcast, where we're talking to those who have gone from mediocrity to motivated, overlooked to overachieving, forgettable to unforgettable. Are you ready? Let's go. We are back. Check out the shirt. Greatness from Small Beginnings podcast, where and I want to get back to bringing some guests in or going mobile and going catching some interviews with guests, which I am intending on doing starting soon. Hopefully, next week is Thanksgiving week, so perhaps not that one. Maybe the week after. So I'm looking forward to things slowing down just a nudge so that I can get out and about or get guests into my studio here. And I'm looking forward to those moments. All right. That being said, we're going to get into one of the things that keeps us from being great. Okay, so I've talked a lot about greatness, the things to do, the things to be over the last almost year now. I've given you some tactics. If it looks like I'm eating the mic, I'm trying something new to make the audio sound a little sweeter because it doesn't sound great compared to the opening. Yeah, I'm just trying new stuff to see what it'll be. So bear with me, all right? That being said, I'm trying to naturally give a broader picture as to what greatness is and working out greatness looks like, and then what are the things we need to avoid in the process of that greatness. So this is more one that I would say is this is what we should avoid, but we'll use the term to cherish, or let's call it delight in another person because of their personhood, their skills, their things that they bring to the table that you do not. I've been listening second time through to a book called Cherish, and it's a marriage book, and I would highly recommend it. Let me pull it up. Let me pull it up real quick, and I'll show it to you on here. See if it'll focus on it. It won't focus on it, but there we go. Hopefully you can see it from that distance. It's called Cherish by Gary Thomas, and get it in print, get it on audio, whatever it takes. It's worth the listen, very much so. I'm on my second run through just to make sure that, because I'm listening to it, that I catch it all. I love his examples and analogies in there. So this is where this has come from, is that I realize that I have a couple of difficult people in my life. And my wife is not really one of them. Like, we're a pretty good team. And that relationship, of course, is difficult at times, but I won't say I've always, okay, but I typically have been that guy that the word I use instead of cherish, that we have used and others have used, is I adore her. I act as if, whether I feel it or not, and I'm a feeler, I'm a feel first kind of guy. So often I'll feel a certain way, but in this case of marriage, in this case of adoring her, cherishing her, and I'll use another word called delight in her, I need to just practice the thing and allow my emotions, like act upon the thought of that definition, that word in my life, and then get going on the fact that I do actually adore, delight, and cherish her. So I'm going to act as if I do. My emotions will follow. And that's a known fact. It's a known thing all over the place. And sometimes we take action, our desires, our motivation, all those things will follow. And it's the same with our hearts in regards to adoring somebody, cherishing somebody. But I also have a couple of difficult people in my life. I run a team. I am not the best person in the world at holding people accountable, especially for things that they consider not their favorite thing or they're not their best thing. Is I like to bend towards that and kind of light people up in the place that they're the best or that they see as their best spot to light up to be better. But sometimes I need to do it in areas they don't love. And so I don't love holding people accountable. And yet there's a couple that I do need to. And I need to push back my thoughts of I don't want to do that, or maybe an insecurity that there's going to be a conflict in the conversation. I've also discovered that even in this book, that conflict actually brings us closer to things and to resolve it, to relationship, to deepening relationship. Been reading a business book lately that had a lot to do with that, and so that to me is becoming more of a mental habit for me to enter into conflict, not because I love it, but because it's actually better for both of us. It's better if it's a team thing. It's if I, and I enter into a conflict with one person, it's better for the team because we can get our thing together. The team then grows because there's nothing less standing in the way. But today I want to lean pretty hard in the middle here to something that the author of that book said that applies to all the relationships around us, that the opposite of cherish, the opposite of delight is contempt. And there's a process of getting there. And some of the process, half of it is kind of justifiable. And this is where the trap is. So the process, I'll just go through real quick, is of contempt towards another person or even another organization. um, be it a church, be it a company we do business with. I hired somebody to do a project for me over the summer, and I wouldn't say that I'm of the point of contempt, but I'm very disappointed to the point of frustrated. Am I going to let myself be embittered by it? No, not necessarily, but very, very disappointed with the process, the customer service, and the lack of communication in the process. That being said, I already went through some of it here, but let me tell you the road to contempt is this right here: disappointment, then frustration, then bitterness, which turns into contempt. So the interesting thing about disappointment is it's about an observation that turns a little bit emotional, and there's nothing wrong with being aware. So these first two, disappointment and frustration, they actually are completely justifiable in many cases. But there's a slippery slope there that I found, especially with these difficult people. Disappointment is about awareness and about awareness of how it affected others, how it affected you, how the actions or the behaviors or the how that person is relating to you or others. It's it creates a disappointment that says, oh man, I wish that had gone better. I wish perhaps that they were aware of how they come across in these kinds of situations. And there's nothing wrong with that awareness. And sometimes it's not your job to go tell them. Not always, and maybe not almost never. But what is the deal is that there's a progression, that if that disappointment turns to frustration, which I also think has to do with justice. So if you're disappointed in a person, let's say this contractor has disappointed me, and now I'm frustrated with them. I look at the final invoice and I say, no, it doesn't match the original estimate. And not only am I disappointed because the customer service wasn't great, but now I'm justified in feeling a certain way regarding the final invoice and regarding picking it apart. And it could be just as easily on their side that they have justifications for each point. And that though I might not have been told that the original quote was just an estimate, I thought it was a bid. Like some of these components are going to be this price. And many of them had labor added and other things added that I'm like, man, what in the world is going on? So if it gets to the point of frustration, some of that frustration is justified. And so let's talk about justice as being the thing. So I could have a just cause and be all the way from disappointment to frustration and have justice in that cause 100%. And it isn't wrong to do that or be that. But realize that the next step past frustration and it takes, hopefully, if your heart's emotionally mature, it takes you a minute to get to bitterness. If you're bitterness, it's turning to a self-focus. And it might not even be a self-focus. It might be a focus on the team. But what it does is it closes down your perspective. You see your cause as just. You see it a certain way, or you have an opinion about it, and that opinion is it. And we have to be careful that once we get into the frustration mode after disappointment, that we can easily move to bitterness without even knowing it's hitting us. So that when we interact with that person that we're not seeing eye to eye with, or with that difficult person in our life, if we automatically go to this thing that has a check in our heart, that like we get a knot in our stomach when that person walks in or we have to interact with them, then we're already near, if not in, bitterness, because there's something in our heart saying, nope, it ain't right. Something's off. And we need to check that. Well, what often happens, the great examples, what often happens in marriage is the next step after bitterness is contempt, where since bitterness is us in that just cause, I mean, it's frustration, and that just cause is us stewing on the fact that we're just in what we feel, and then bitterness is a reflection on how they should do it better, do whatever it is better, and your opinions then become bigger than the problem or than the person or the relationship. Then it moves to contempt, and then you're in complete danger zone. And I have felt some of those things in regard to a couple of these difficult people. Like I feel absolute mistrust because we have basically no relationship in this moment, at least. And it's so frustrating. And there's a contempt where the contempt is that we see ourselves as better than them because of the justice of our cause, because we went through the process here of getting there, but didn't stop at bitterness. Man, I can resonate with that. And I shouldn't, but I do. And I'm going to start more adamantly, more zealously checking myself and having conversations earlier in the process that re-engage. I had a difficult one yesterday with somebody and started the conversation. I had to just kind of blurt a couple of things because I didn't know how else to really get there. And this person and I have known each other a long time. And I said, I'm just going to put it out there. And they were okay with that. But then at the end, there was actually some emotional flare-ups, both negative and a little bit tender. Before we were all done, we shared some tears together, some deeper frustration about the items that were on the list, so to speak. And it ended well. Now, is there more work to do? Yeah, there almost always is. But the best part is that I didn't allow myself to go to contempt or even to the point of bitterness. That in this case, at least, I went to him and I said, listen, we need to talk about this. We need, what I said, we got to bury the hatchet. Like we got to bring this up, see where we end up. And he was very kind in allowing me to do that. So that being said, contempt is the greatness killer. And let's take a minute to think about together about our greatness. Our road to greatness is full of people. And who are they? And how do we see them? Where are we at on this field here? Are they Is there no disappointment whatsoever? Well, we got to be careful of that because sometimes we're just not aware. If we don't feel certain things or we don't think they're disappointing us in any possible way, we can still be aware and observe and still stop before disappointment. And I think we should be aware and observe that our road to greatness with others, there's tons of people along that path. It's mostly related to people. Our road to greatness is because if we're not being great for others, then what is the point? It's kind of like knowing a subject so completely, like being the best in the world at a subject, but not actually teaching it. It makes no sense. So then my question says, well, how do we see them? How do we see these people that are in our path, no matter what position they are in our life, no matter whether we have disappointment, frustration, bitterness, or contempt for them? But where are they in our life and how do we see them? What about our spouse? Here's a great example of the spouse one that in that book, Cherish, he gives. And I love it because it's an excellent picture of insight into the relationship that Nancy Reagan had with Ronald Reagan. After in 1981, Ronald Reagan got shot. He got shot on his left side. And that particular time must have been extenuating circumstances and maybe even a choice she had not to be with him. She needed some counsel from a pastor and some other people that I believe Billy Graham was one of them. But on a couple of occasions after that shooting happened, because she felt guilty, because when Ronald Reagan traveled and he was out there, Nancy was always on his left side. And she felt that her greatness was making him great and getting him to where he was supposed to be to change the world that was in front of him. And that's a sweet sentiment. And yet she seemed to have lived it out, but she felt guilt for not being there that day on his left side so that she could, in essence, take the bullet. Or perhaps had she been there, then the bullet would have been directed somewhere else. Who knows? What happened did happen, but that is an amazing sentiment about how she delighted in her husband and delighted in his greatness, being a greatness they shared together. And that is an awful lot of what this book is, Cherish. So again, I highly recommend it. Get into it. But Nancy Reagan is a great example of those who cherish, they delight in being positionally in and with their spouse. The other people that we may need to consider as we think about delight or cherish, or at least, man, I'm struggling with putting this into perfect context with this, or maybe it's more that we survive with this person because we're never probably going to see eye to eye because positionally we're off. But our boss, like, how do we see what they see and delight in them? That all comes down for me to the word honor. And we just need to honor them. Because honor is a position given to them by God or for somebody above them and us. And so we just need to honor them. I heard recently that the word honor comes from it, partly from the recipient. The other person gets to determine the type, the style, and the culture, I suppose, around that honor. We don't get to decide that, but we should honor nonetheless. Our parents, our government officials, those are put into place by, a representative republic, democratic vote, and we need to respect that process. But our parents were given to us by God, and God did that, so we need to respect and respect that and honor that. And with that commandment in the 10 commandments comes a promise that we will live a long life. And my assumption is that long life isn't just in years, but it's a full life. It's a life full of advancement, prosperity, and it's not just about money. It's about prosperity, living well, and being an example to others of how to live well. Okay, the boss. We don't know how to do it very well, but we do need to honor the position, leaning towards the delighting in the fact that that boss hired us, that we are in the organization because the boss rubber stamps our position. And then coworkers that are on the same level as us. It's easy to go from disappointment to frustration to bitterness and perhaps even to contempt. And I've had some come my direction recently, and it's like, whoa, what just happened? And then I basically turned up the niceness meter and said, I think one of the things they may be missing, and they may not be wrong in what they're saying, but one of the things they may be missing is me just connecting with them. And in a couple of cases, that's what it was. I just needed to say hi more often, be more positive, because it was brought out that I kind of was a little bit negative when I walked into a certain department in our company. It's like, okay, that hurt a little bit, but if it's true, then I need to get it fixed. So I started working diligently on it. And then it got better because these are people, just even with me. I have no authority over them. I just need to maintain that relationship because at times that relationship is going to energize what we do together for the company and for the organization we work in. So core workers outside of your that inner circle, we also need to just treat them well, honor them because their position has been accepted by others, rubber stamped by others. And we need to do a good job of delighting in the fact that they're part of us and that they may bring things that we can't. So my direct reports, I've already talked about some of that. I need to delight in the fact that they go do their work. Now I need to hold them accountable for doing it, ever better, like ever improving, right? And so I need to do that. And yet I can delight in the fact that they're there so I don't have to do it all, or that so nobody else has to pick it all up. And that is a really, really, really good thing to have them available, to have them on essentially my team. Make sure they fit, of course. That's good. It's good for them and good for us both. But the direct reports to you people that are talking, small business owners, where you have employees, and maybe it's one or two, maybe it's all the way up to 60 or 100 or 200, whatever it is. We need to see people as they're seen by others. Like, yes, God delights in them. God made them for a special purpose and a greatness, just like he made you, not for the same thing, but like he made you, he made them for something great. And if possible, we need to enhance that for them just by being available relationally, if nothing else. That being said, I want to end it by reminding all of us that cherish / delight is something that we can have for other people and should have. Remember the opposite, contempt, and the pathway to contempt we need to avoid. Disappointment and frustration. Neither of those are wrong. But if you get to frustration, deep into frustration with somebody, watch your heart because you may be heading towards bitterness and eventually contempt. It's always good to look at the opposite and where you don't want to go when it comes to being the best, your best self and the greatest you can be. So cherish and delight. Do not let contempt enter your heart. It is completely self-absorbed, and that's you thinking you're better than others. And in most cases, that thought is not justified. Sometimes they are better than people at things, but that most cases the thought is not justified. So One of my favorite things to end with, Zig Ziglar. I'm talking to you now, the listener. You were designed for accomplishment, engineered for success, and endowed with the seeds of greatness. God made you to be like that. So here's the call to action. Now go be great. You get to choose.